Hi everybody, my name's Sean Collins, this is Outsiders, and this is another DM's Tips programme. This week we're going to be talking about what they call the BBEG, the Big Bad End Guy. First off, I think a couple of things to talk about when you talk about the Big Bad End Guy. It's not always at the end. I think one of the most common mistakes that referees can make is gearing the entire session up to the big fight at the end of their game. I don't think games have to end that way all the time. In fact, actually, I think good players become acutely aware of this, and so resource manage accordingly. Now, if you think for a minute, just take a pause for a moment, think about your games. Are you running them where it always gears up towards the end of the session for the big fight at the end? Because if you are, think about how your players are managing their characters. Do you think, looking back on it, that now they're actually managing it in a particular way so that they can get the best out of those final encounters? That's something you need to think about, and maybe something you need to change quite quickly. It's very easy to do, really. You can end your game at different parts to start at different parts in the next session, so it can actually kick off, the next session can actually kick off with a big fight. Now, remember that when they use the terminology BBEG, it could mean the particular bad guy for a particular session or story arc, a main adversary. It could mean that, but everybody has a different interpretation of it. So in this particular video, I'm trying to cover off as many of those interpretations as I can, and equally touch on some ways to use them. Now, to make your bad guys, your big bad end guy, memorable, that's an art form, and it's really important, out of all the things you do, that your main guys, your main enemy, really have been thought through really well. When you build them, really think about them. Think about their intelligence, their resources, what they would do in a situation. Think about how they're going to fight the players. Where are they likely to meet the players? What advantages can you give as a DM to that big bad end guy, which is reasonable for the level and is fair, but at the same time shows their familiarity with what's around them. Some things I like to do with big bad end guys is I like to think about minions that work best with them. And a great example of that recently on some of the videos that we've done was where I talked about Gremlocks and Medusas. So the Gremlocks can't see, but actually are aware of their surroundings through blind sight. So of course they work very well with, a Medusa, who they don't need to be able to see her to be able to obey her orders. So it's a really great one too. Undead can be great minions for some much more important servant, maybe a clerical, evil cleric. And particularly in the more modern versions of Pathfinder, evil clerics are nasty, plain nasty, and would make great adversaries, particularly with their negative energy channeling, healing the undead and hurting the players. That's really nice. So those sort of things can really, really pay off. So think about your end guys in terms of the minions that they have around them. And I don't use minions as throwaways. I hate that word in some ways, but what I mean by that is people that would work best with them. And work it that way and have a think about it. And sometimes, funny enough as well, when you think about your BBEG, sometimes opposites attract. Sometimes actually some obscure angles can really work well. But at the end of the day, whatever you do and whatever you decide to do, best laid plans and all that can always fall apart. But if your main enemy or big bad end guy is well thought through, it can be something that can become really powerful for that particular session, something that the players really have looked forward to, and it's something that's talked about for a long time. I've come to the conclusion many years ago that actually sometimes it is worth, if a particular one really comes off the page really well, and you think, you know what, I've really enjoyed this has been a really interesting encounter, and I know it's going to end, I can see they're being overrun, and it's within the next round or two, it's about to go bad for them, but I want to try and save them. There are some great ways that you can create a little bit of tension in the group with the not knowing part. So let me try and explain that in this video. So for example, on a couple of occasions, and again you have to do it sparingly and you have to time it, so it's got to be somebody that maybe you've fallen in love with that type of character, you really invested a lot of time in something you really enjoyed, and you can see the players are enjoying it. That might be one of those counters, might be one of those BBEGs that's worth saving. So what I would say is this: come up with a way where it's unknown if they die. That may sound controversial, but think about all the great books think about all the great scenes. One of my favourites that I did was I had a particular female character that became a nemesis of the group for many years, terrorised them for many years. Her name was Atelka Hertzen. She started off as very minor in the game I was running. And the characters eventually, when they did finally catch up with her, there was a fantastic fight along a fast-flowing river. And it was really, really good fun. And it was very close. But eventually the final blow hit her, and I had her fall into the fast-flowing water, briefly seen, then go under. And the characters, although they made every effort to try and find the body, never did. Now, they didn't know whether she was alive or dead. And actually that is very powerful. I mean, it is absolutely horrible in some ways, because they were like congratulating but at the same time not sure. And then it allowed me that platform that several months later I was able to bring her back. And that was a really, really powerful session, and it was great fun. So those sort of things you can do with the BBEGs. So really, to recap, in this particular program, what I would suggest is that think about the BBEG characters, put your investment into them, really bring them to life. Think about their feats, their personalities, the skills, the spells that they have. Think about who works for them. Think about how you're going to bring them to life. Don't be afraid with particular encounters. It doesn't have to be at the very, very end. Players will resource manage if you allow them to. So don't be afraid to start one off with a bang. Don't be afraid to put it in the middle. You can wind down in different ways. That's where, if you go back and revisit some of the programs we've done on DM's Tips, when you look back, you know, pacing is important in these types of games. Think about that. It doesn't always have to end on a high. Some games don't need it. And some of the best games I've ever had have never rolled a dice. So, this has been DM's Tips. My name's Sean Connors. Happy gaming. Until the next time we meet. All the best.